Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Combluzia, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Orex Minerals, which is a junior mineral exploration company with a portfolio of large gold, silver, and copper exploration projects on prominent mineral trends in Mexico and Canada. It recently optioned the Valenciana gold-silver project in the northern part of Zacatecas, Mexico, in the heart of the Mexican silver trend. Also in Mexico, it is advancing the Canetto project with JV partner Fresnillo and the Sandra project with JV partner Pan American Silver. And in Canada, it owns a 100% interest in the Jumping Josephine gold project. Orex is part of the Belcara Group, which is led by a strong roster of professionals that have a track record of identifying and advancing exploration projects. Today, I have with me on the webinar Ben Whiting, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer at Orex Minerals. Good to have you with us, Ben.
Yes, good morning, Taylor, and it's great to be with you again.
Perfect. So today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first, Ben will provide an update on Orex, and then in the second part, we'll take your questions live during a Q&A session. So please submit your questions using the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. So to start, I'll cover off the disclosures and then turn it over to Ben. So for Orex Minerals, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Orex corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. And we note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Orex Minerals specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Ben to give you an update on Orex Minerals.
Thank you very much. And what I'd like to point out is it is a time of opportunities in Mexico. And this is something that Taylor and I have discussed before, is what's happening in Mexico and the changes. So if people have questions about changes, and it's an election year in Mexico, so there may be some changes coming up to the legal frameworks that are happening in the mining industry, but it is definitely a time of opportunities in Mexico for the acquisition of mineral properties. So I will be making some forward-looking statements. This is always what people have. One of the forward-looking statements is about the financing that we will be doing. We're going to be opening up an equity private placement financing for Orex. And anybody that's interested in participating in the equity financing, I certainly welcome your involvement in this project. So the Belcara Management Group has a series of companies in the group, and we do share some accounting and some legal benefits so that it is an opportunity to reduce the G&A part of expenditures for junior mining companies to be able to work together. You may have heard that one of the other companies in our group is called Barcele Minerals. They're in the middle of a merger with Goldline Resources on a big project in Sweden. They have projects in Sweden and Finland for that project. That's also part of the Belcara group management team. And so we have had success and have been able to make discoveries and lead to mergers and acquisitions that add value for shareholders. So that gives you a sense for it. You may know from previous work that I was involved with the La Preciosa silver gold discovery in Mexico. And so La Preciosa is in a place that is in the same silver trend as where Orex's properties are. That's why it's relevant to Orex Minerals. Now the share structure, great share structure here is that we have under 20 million shares out, trading at about 15.5 cents per share. And within that, so it's a fairly tight, we've got about 65% institutional. So you've got US Global in Texas, Ingalls and Snyder, brokerage accounts in New York, Sprott Asset Management in Toronto. So these are players that are involved in the junior sector. Fresnillo is the world's largest silver mining company. They do have 3% of the company. Management, we do participate as well, and I participated in the recent financings, and we are at about 15%. And so there's still 17% in the retail exchange. I point out the Barsele one, and I had mentioned Barsele in Sweden. It's because Barsele was a spin-out from Orex. Barsele has a 2% net smelter return that is still held by Orex Minerals. So it's an asset in the Orex portfolio. To those companies that are and watchers that are involved in royalty companies that are interested in acquiring a royalty on an advanced exploration to development project in Sweden, then that's something that they can contact us about as well. So it may not be your interest in Mexico, but your interest in a project in Sweden is something that we can discuss with Orex. And so that's a valuable asset within the Orex portfolio. So the project portfolio right now is, you see Valenciana is the newest one in Mexico, and that's in Zacatecas state. The sample that's on the image there, it shows some of the sulfides. So you're in a sulfide, low sulfidation epithermal system that has sphalerite and galena in it, as well as the silver-bearing minerals, argentite. Canetto project for Fresnillo is a project with a fairly significant resource on it as well. I'm not going to be concentrating on the Sandra project because it's under review with Pan American Silver, so we'll skip by that one. But Jumping Josephine is the last project on that list, and it's 100% Orex. It is available if somebody needs a project as a listing project or would like to option a project in British Columbia. That is something that we're interested in negotiating. So the Durango area, the Durango and Zacatecas states, that headline needs to change. In Durango and Zacatecas states is the silver trend. It extends all the way down into Guanajuato and up into Sonora. That silver trend shows where Sandra, Canetto, and Valenciana are located. Valenciana being the newest project. But also on that map is a little red dot at La Preciosa, which shows where our discovery was there. You can see other places like Piteria. La Piteria is one of the biggest development projects, and it is the team from Endeavor Silver that has that. If you're in Zacatecas, the town of Fresnillo is where the biggest mining company, Fresnillo, has their operations. And that's they're the #1 silver mining producer in the world. It's not that far away from La Colorada, which is Pan American Silver. You can also see La Parillas on there. You can see San Sebastian, which is Hecla mining. All these major silver deposits that stretch through this trend. And so it's a silver-rich environment. Valenciana. Valenciana, you can see a gentle hillsides here. You're on the Mesa Central, or the high plateau area of Mexico. This is a silver, gold, and base metals project. You can see from this image that there's a lot of alteration and iron oxides that you see at surface. In the distance, you can see on the hillsides there are some old mine workings with the terreros, the rock piles, and that is part of the Valenciana camp, the mining camp itself. So located north of the village of Valenciana, it's 100% option that we picked up from Exploraciones El Cairo, a Mexican national registered company. And it shows evidence of early production history, probably before the Mexican Revolution, so over 100 years ago. But there was also some in the mining camp to the west of us that probably dates from the 1960s, judging from the types of working that are there. But it's a district consolidation project. I see, studying this overall camp, is something that I'd certainly like to tackle, and I've done it in a couple of other projects before. Valenciana is a good opportunity for that. So here's examples of some footings from old mining workings that are on the project. High-grade silver, gold, lead, zinc epithermal system. There has been history here. Only in this main part of it, there's only 10 diamond drill holes were completed in 1996 before the downturn that happened in the mining industry in 1997. There was a problem on the other side of the world down in Indonesia, and that caused a dampening of exploration worldwide for about 5 or 6 years. Happened 7 months after Pan American Silver drilled this project, so they had given it back to the original holders. There was some short RC holes, reverse circulation holes, completed by Silver Standard in 2003. So there really hasn't been a lot of work done on this project for the past 2 decades. The main Valenciana vein is on the mineral concessions we have for about 2.7 kilometers of strike length. So on this project, the potential of it was certainly identified in 1996 by some of the key prospectors, and the prospectors who won Prospector of the Year award from the PDAC are Bud Hillemeyer and Perry Durning of La Cuesta Internacional. And they were involved in identifying this project and have brought it back to our attention here. So this is something beautiful country to be working in. So the original claims that we have an area of influence. There are additional targets. The claims that are to the eastern side, we've been in communication with Frisco, and their geologist there is a longtime colleague of mine, and he certainly would like to talk about how we can consolidate on that side. And our joint venture partners at Canetto have influence on the western side of this project. So it's something that we can certainly open the dialogue of expanding. So there's a bit of the project history. There has certainly been some surface sampling, some drilling, but not a lot of it. There's some geophysical surveys that have been done. A ground line induced polarization survey does show that there are conductors, and the identification of sulfides in this area and the amount of iron oxides that you can see would show that that is an appropriate technique for identifying the zones of targets at a deeper level on the property. Some more modern geophysics would certainly be able to refine that kind of work, and that's something that we are considering as well. Here's an example of the silver geochemistry. You can see where the Valenciana vein trend is with some high silver. There's up to a kilogram silver at surface on some of these surface samples. It's this main west-northwest trending vein system. 52 of the samples were over 50 parts per million silver. From the sampling on this trend. You can also see the neighboring property of Providencia. That's under the control of Fresnillo. And the structures on Providencia probably intersect the Valenciana, and they'll intersect on our property, is where that may cause a greater dilatancy zone. So the dilation of the veins allowing for greater openings in that area. Gold geochemistry, very similar. You can see that there's some on the Ruth vein a little further to the west as well. But the Valenciana vein trend has gold, silver, lead, and zinc on the property. So high assays on silver went up to 17 grams of gold. And so 25 samples were over a gram of gold right on that surface trend. So here's a couple of the places where the drilling was done and some of the cross sections cutting through that area. The deepest drill hole penetrated just over 300 meters down the hole, so not a terribly deep, but the geophysics shows that there are certainly anomalies below that. The bottom of the hole was 2.5 meters or 2.19 meters of 2.5 grams per ton gold with 1,115 grams per ton silver. So that's over 1,300 grams per ton silver. And it had a 1.9% lead zinc on the property as well. So most of the holes, though, are relatively shallow. They're in the 150 meter portion of the property. So here's an example of some of the hits that are on the Valenciana claims that we have optioned. And you can see that there is certainly some high grade. We put the silver equivalent grades on here, and many of them are over the 3, 4, 7, and even kilogram values. You can see that the lead and zinc are also very significant on these drill holes. So, moving over to Canetto, this is a big alteration zone where the organics shows that it's between two veins in this part of the property, but it does show that this hillside is very similar terrain that we do have in Valenciana. We're in the same Mesa Central, and this is the joint venture with Fresnillo. It's a window of the lower volcanic succession, about 17 kilometers by 4 kilometers wide, hosting over 50 veins on the property. So the town of Canetto de Comonfort, the hillside that's in the background, that's the La Bufa. La Bufa is where there's a series of veins. I'm standing on some veins in that photograph, and there are veins going for many kilometers to the south of where I'm standing in this photograph as well. So it's a big project with a resource and over 450 years of mining history, but most of them only could take it down to the water table in the early days, which our technology today can show that we can go much deeper than that. This particular set of intercepts here show that the mineralization does carry down deeper. Some of these holes in Santo Nino are 400 meters below surface, and you're getting kilogram type material that is down that far down with silver and gold. It's a silver gold ratio by value for the whole project is about a 1-to-1 by value of gold and silver. So we've done metallurgical testing on this property. The 5 zones averaging 93% for gold, the highest at 98.5. Silver's still coming out in the leach testing, and it's up in the 80% for the silver recovery. So these are conventional methods, very straightforward. There is one zone that's separate called Promontorio, and its mineralization styles are a little bit different. So we may look at that in a different way. It's more of a stockwork zone that is similar to the El Castillo mining project that's further to the east of Canetto. And so, but it still recovers gold and silver quite well. So this project, we've done 106 drill holes, 38,000 meters of drilling on 12 of the targets on the property. This is what it looks like. The oxidized material, you can see the gold and silver values. That'd be in the top, say, 60, 70 meters. And when you get down deeper, you're getting into this beautiful boiling textures where you do get some of the high grades, plus you're getting copper, lead, and zinc coming into the system at the deeper levels. So 6 of the zones have a resource estimate on the property. And the independent resource estimate brings it up to, if you're looking at it from a gold equivalent, about 538,000 ounces of gold. If you're looking at silver equivalent, we're looking at about 40 million ounces of silver so far. So Jumping Josephine is in the West Kootenay region, and it's not that far from Trail, British Columbia, which is where the smelter is. Beautiful southeastern part of the province of British Columbia. We have a small resource there on a plum of gold. It's about 64,000 ounces of gold sitting right at surface. So all projects, as it currently stands within Orex, is that Orex's share is about 36 million ounces of silver in these 3 projects that have resources on them. Valenciana does not have a resource yet. It's still in the earlier exploration and consolidation of the mining camp. So if you're conscious about the community engagement, people often talk about ESG. We've been doing this all along within our group for the past 2 decades in Mexico. You'll see that here we're planting trees for the local schoolyards and getting the school children involved. We also have construction of the dams for the ranchers for when they're working their cattle. And so they may also currently have dams on it. In this case, we were aiding them in repairing their dams after a major storm event that happens. So getting involved with the local community, being aware of the environment, and sound governance is part of our DNA for our company. So Valenciana and Canetto are the main focus in Mexico right now. Community engagement and acquisitions are key going forward as well. So acquisitions, we get new property submissions all the time. That brings us back to financing. And financing is something that we'll be opening up an equity private placement for Orex, because we need to do this in cooperation with our shareholders and build shareholder value. So we've got a diversified portfolio, we've got a strong team, we've done it before, and there's more to be discovered. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks a lot, Ben. Great presentation. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar, and just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. So maybe we'll just kick it off with kind of our discussion that you brought up at the beginning with respect to what's going on in Mexico. We've talked about the election coming up and that AMLO has to move on due to term limits. How is the race kind of looking at this point? Are there other candidates that are looking to kind of continue his legacy and policies, or are things kind of looking more encouraging going forward?
I'm getting from a variety of sources, both on the legal and the mining side. So we're talking to some of the abogados, the lawyers down in Mexico, and saying that many of the policies that were recommended by AMLO have not made it through the system and have not been approved by the Supreme Court. Some of the methodologies as they were being introduced were not followed by the standard methods. Many of the mining companies, we filed our amparos saying that we got an existing project that should be covered under the older rules. The 2 candidates that seem to be the front runners, there is one for the same party as AMLO, but she seems to be a little bit more realistic, is a better way to put it. She listens a little bit more and also is undergoing more consultation with the industry than her predecessor. So I'm hopeful on that side. Also, the opposition parties, the lead candidate there is also a woman. So there's a good chance that the next president, the very first time, will be a woman president in Mexico. Both of those candidates are coming out relatively moderate in their conversational levels, not as aggressive as AMLO has historically. So I'm hopeful, and that's why I also think that Mexico, it's a time of opportunities.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So definitely something to keep watching over the coming months. Okay, we have a question here. It's kind of broad. Okay, here's another one. Somebody wondering what your burn rate is, how much you have in the bank right now. And then kind of the follow-up on that is just, I guess, what are your goals with, I assume with Valenciana, but I'm not sure here. It just says with your advanced discovery.
Yeah, our burn rate we've kept very, very low. I've certainly, because of financing, I stopped taking a salary, and that's something that when the accounts get too low, the senior people in our group will often suspend what we've done and work off of aligning more with the shareholders there. There's not, to be honest, there's not a lot of money in the till right now, but we do not owe anything. So I believe we're in about the $70,000 range, and there's probably a burn rate of $25,000-$30,000 that is mainly for our staff. Mm-hmm. So that means that Orex needs to finance, and that's certainly good questions from Hugo, that to be aware of the timing. We're looking at doing $1 million financing, doing it the same as we did the one in December. We did a short one in December, which I participated in, and we're looking at 15 cents for the unit, and the unit would include a full warrant, a 2-year warrant at, I believe it's 20 cents.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it's helpful color on that front there. So maybe just turning to Valenciana right now. You talked a bit about that it's been drilled in the past. It is pre-43-101. Just wondering, I guess, how useful would that be for a future resource? Is it mainly for helping with targeting, and would you have to re-drill everything, or can you do some confirmatory drilling on that?
You're right. It's just before the 43-101 requirements. So it was 27 years ago is when those drill holes are. I have the data. I've got long connections with Pan American Silver, and they dug up some of that data from their Durango office down there. So we've got the spatial locations of where a good drilling program was run. It just doesn't qualify under any resource studies, but it's a great guide for exploration. What I'd like to do is look at the ore chute that they've identified on the Valenciana vein and drill down that ore chute. So it doesn't have to be just repeating what's been done in the past. We might do a check hole that would be repeat, but I would like to define more of the spatial orientation of a steeply dipping, southward dipping ore chute on that structure.
Right. So essentially leveraging the holes to maybe accomplish more than to accomplish multiple objectives with one hole, essentially, and test.
Yes. And I'd also like to look at that place where the structures come together, the projection of the Providencia structure, which is more of a northeasterly striking structure, versus the Valenciana, which is more of an east-west structure, where those two come together, and the plunge direction of the intersection of those two structures is something that has not been evaluated.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay, maybe let's just turn to the corporate side again. In the past, kind of we've talked about what you're looking at in terms of M&A, corporate strategy, etc. And then after that is when you entered that option agreement for the Valenciana. What's kind of the view going forward? You mentioned Fresnillo's evaluating, Pan American. Sorry, I forget which one's doing the review, but
Pan American Silver has the Sandra project with us there. Yeah. My anticipation is that Sandra, because we made a good discovery there, but we ran into metallurgical difficulties, in that the silver was trapped within the crystal lattice of manganese minerals, and that there was some difficulty getting decent silver extraction from the metallurgical testing. I think that it's a project that was good for us initially, but for a junior explorer, it's a project that was not giving us any joy back. And as you're aware, geologists often fall in love with their projects, But if your project doesn't love you back, that's a problem. And I see that the Sandra project, as much as the community has been great and the discovery was made there, that project has metallurgical issues that, as a junior mining company, I don't think that we should be spending a lot of our effort on that particular project. And so it's probably going to be farmed out.
Right. Okay.
So,
so that's kind of the, other than like now that you have Valenciana, that's kind of on the corporate front, what the focus is on with
that is correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We have a question here. Just wondering if you have any goals for Sweden.
Sweden is Orex has the 2% NSR, which is something that we may monetize, and I'm certainly talking to different royalty companies right now about that. But I'm one of the founders of Orex Minerals, which was a spin-out from Orex, so many shareholders are in common. It is entering a merger agreement with Goldline Resources. Goldline Resources has projects that are in the same gold line, as you can imagine the term. There's an intersection of the Skellefteå trend, which is a Proterozoic volcanogenic massive sulfides trend that goes east-west in Sweden, and in more north-south is the gold line of Sweden, which is orogenic gold deposits. On the property of Barcellay, we have both styles. Goldline Resources has several gold exploration projects there, but they also have projects over in Finland. So it looks to me that Orex Minerals and Goldline will merge, and that it may be that that the Finnish projects will become a separate entity at some point, that the Swedish projects of Goldline and Barcellay will be combined as a single entity. And I think it's very positive. The team led by Taj Singh, he was involved with Goldline. He's also involved with Discovery Metals. He was involved with Timmins Gold in Mexico. So we've worked with his group off and on, and some of our people have in the past. And I think it's a very positive move for Orex Minerals going forward. So I'm here speaking on behalf of Orex Minerals, but Orex Minerals is also something you might have people take a look at.
Perfect. Okay. So I don't see any other questions that have come in, but maybe just wondering if you have any update or updated outlook, I guess, on the silver market or silver space and the industry on that front.
It's one of those questions you see in different websites and webinars that are going on, is when is the time for silver? Many people have said that silver is undervalued, and the ratio of silver to gold is out of whack right now. The amount of silver that will be needed in the industrial side, because it's half bullions and coin and collectors and that sort of thing, is half of silver value. The other half is industrial. It's your solar panels and your electronics and the electrification of our society that's supposed to be happening this decade. It is happening in spurts, but there may well be a shortage of silver in the coming seasons. Now, there's the talk about in the copper space. If more copper comes online, there is silver that is a byproduct in a lot of copper mines. So these things will be traveling together. Your copper, your lead, zinc, and silver, all of those metals should be increasing in the demand side. The supply side needs to keep up, and there have not been a lot of new discoveries in the silver space to meet the demand that should be happening over the next decade. So I'm still bullish on silver from a long-term viewpoint. Will there be some fluctuations over the next 6 months? Probably. But I still think that that we are heading into a stronger commodity cycle than what we've seen over the exploration for juniors over the past 6 months. Past 6 months has not been fun from a junior side, but I'm still very optimistic that there are opportunities out there.
Yeah, I think coming into this year, there's optimism around the potential for rate cuts and the spurt that could give, both to the proposition of silver kind of on the investment side, but then, if that also helps the economy pick up and improve the industrial demand, so kind of improve that the demand side on both sides of the equation for silver. But it seems like it's been pushed out a bit later in this year at least, and we'll see what comes. So I think with that, we haven't had any other questions come in, so maybe we'll turn now to just wrap things up. So I would like to thank Ben from Orex Minerals for taking the time to host the webinar today with Red Cloud Securities, and thank you to everybody for tuning in with us this afternoon.
I'd like to thank all of the people at Red Cloud and make a plug for the Red Cloud's pre-PDAC mining showcase, that it's a worthwhile event, and I certainly appreciate the team that you have, Taylor, and all of your colleagues at Red Cloud.